So I want you to picture a scrawny, kind of squeaky voice kid in 1960s Seattle.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And he is constantly rocking back and forth, just almost vibrating with this intense energy that he really doesn't know what to do with.
Right.
He absolutely hates following the rules. I
Yeah.
mean, he's so fiercely argumentative that he actually drives his very socially prominent parents straight into therapy.
Which is saying something for that era.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And at one point, his school speech therapist actually deems him retarded, which, using the clinical terminology of that time.
It's a really striking image, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Especially when you consider that, just to make a point about lung capacity for a show and tell project, this exact same kid brings a literal blood-seeping cow lung into his classroom.
Wait, a real cow lung?
A real cow lung. He just slaps it on his desk and physically squeezes it until a classmate completely passes out.
Oh, wow. That's intense.
Very intense.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are reverse engineering the childhood of, honestly, one of the most consequential figures of our time.
We really are.
We're unpacking the 2025 memoir Source Code, My Beginnings, to really understand the exact family dynamics, the incredibly lucky breaks, and, the personal rebellions that forged this iconic tech founder's mind.
And it's such an important story to tell.
It is,
Yeah.
because the reason I wanted to start with that image of this scrawny, rebellious kid is that we have this pervasive cultural myth about tech visionaries.
Right, the boy genius myth.
Exactly. We tend to imagine them as fully formed geniuses, like they just emerged from the womb, perfectly primed to change the world, quietly solving math equations in some pristine laboratory.
The immaculate conception of genius, yeah.
Right.
It's a comforting myth, but the sources we're looking at reveal a completely different and, frankly, a much messier reality.
Oh, way messier.
Success wasn't born in a vacuum. It was forged in a crucible. I mean, it came from high-stakes card games with a ruthless grandmother.
Which we're definitely going to talk about.
Oh, yeah. And grueling 50-mile wilderness hikes in the freezing rain.
Yeah.
And literal middle-of-the-night dumpster diving.
I cannot wait to get to the dumpster diving. But before we get into all that, we have to understand the water this kid was swimming in.
The environment.
Yeah, Seattle in the 1960s.
Right. To set the historical backdrop, we have to travel back to post-World War II Seattle. Specifically, the View Ridge neighborhood around 1962.
Okay.
This is an incredible moment in time. The Century 21 World's Fair is happening right in their backyard.
Oh, wow, great.
The space race is in full swing. The atmosphere in Seattle is just practically vibrating with techno-optimism.
You read about the World's Fair in the sources, and it sounds like a literal science fiction novel come to life.
It really does.
I mean, they had the Mercury capsule on display. They had this mock-up of a 6-wheeled, nuclear-powered car called the Seattleite 21.
A nuclear-powered car.
Yeah. And they had this massive $100,000 IBM computer just sitting there calculating things in front of the public.
That is exactly the point, though.
Mm-hmm.
The overarching message of that era and the foundational belief this kid absorbed was this profound conviction that rational minds could solve absolutely any problem.
Right.
There was no mystery left in the world, only puzzles waiting to be decoded by science, engineering, and pure logic.
Pure logic.
Exactly. That cultural baseline of extreme techno-optimism is the canvas upon which everything else in his life is painted.
Okay, so we have the cultural canvas, but how does that actually translate into the mind of a child?
Good question.
The sources point directly to his family and specifically to a woman they called Gami.
His grandmother, Adele Thompson.
Yeah.
To understand Gami's influence, we first have to look at the physical manifestation of this kid's energy.
The rocking.
The rocking, right. From the time he was a literal baby sitting on a rubber hobby horse, he had this habit of rocking back and forth, constantly.
The memoir calls it a metronome for his brain.
A metronome, exactly.
He rocked while sitting, while standing, while eating. Anytime he was deep in thought, he was in motion.
It was this hyperkinetic energy that he simply couldn't contain. And that energy found its first real training ground, its first real point of focus, at Gami's card table.
She sounds pretty intimidating.
She was a formidable presence.
Mm.
She grew up in a rural Washington railroad town, and the sources note that her own mother used to aggressively beat the local society wives at bridge just to level the social playing field.
Oh my gosh, so it's generational.
Exactly. Gami inherited that exact competitive fire. She was stoic, she was deeply religious, but at the card table, she took absolutely no prisoners.
She totally refused to let the kids win.
Never.
They would play these intense games of Coast Guard, rummy, and gin and pounce.
Right.
By the way, I love that his nickname in the family was Trey because he was technically the fourth Bill Gates, but they called him Trey, like the 3 card in a standard deck.
Oh, that's right.
His very identity was tied to a deck of cards.
Which is incredibly fitting.
Oh.
So, picture Trey. At 8 years old, they are playing Pounce, which is this incredibly fast-paced, high-stress group form of solitaire.
Oh, I've played that. It's chaotic.
Very chaotic. Cards are flying everywhere. Trey is staring at his own cards, frantically trying to find matches, completely overwhelmed. And Gami is just calmly sitting there, essentially coaching him against herself.
Wait, what do you mean?
She's saying things like, your 6-card plays, or your 9-card plays.
Wait, she's telling him what to play while she's actively trying to beat him?
Yes, and that is the exact moment.
Yeah.
Trey has an absolute revelation.
Okay.
He realizes she isn't just looking at her own cards. She is simultaneously tracking what is in his hand, what is currently on the table, and what she holds.
Wow.
She's holding the entire state of the game in her head, in real time.
That's incredible.
He realizes in that moment that she isn't just lucky. Luck has nothing to do with it.
You know, this reminds me of a concept in computer science called a state machine.
Oh, interesting.
Think of a traffic light. A traffic light is a state machine. It takes an input like a car pulling up to a sensor, it evaluates a set of conditions, and then it takes the optimal action, which is turning green.
Right.
It's pure conditional logic. Trying to beat his grandmother at cards, this 8-year-old kid is essentially learning game theory, probability, and decision trees.
That is a perfect analogy. And notice the pedagogy here. Notice how she taught him.
Yeah.
Gami didn't pull out a chalkboard and lecture an 8-year-old about probability distributions. She taught by demonstration.
Showing, not telling.
Exactly. She showed him that the world, even a world governed by the seemingly random shuffle of a deck of cards, can be understood, modeled, and completely mastered if your brain is disciplined enough to track the variables.
But I want to be clear here because the sources are very explicit about this. It didn't just click for him instantly.
No, not at all.
He didn't have this revelation at age 8 and suddenly start dominating the card table. It took him 5 years.
5 long years.
5 solid years of constantly losing to her before he finally started beating Gami consistently.
Which tells us something really crucial about his psychology. Most children, frankly most adults, would quit after a year of constantly losing to a superior opponent.
Yeah, I would have quit after a week.
Right. But for him, the losing wasn't a deterrent, it was data. It wired him to believe that complex systems can be cracked if you just apply enough intellectual brute force and time.
So Gami is installing the foundational logic in his brain. But his parents are responsible for the physical and social environment he has to navigate every single day.
And that environment was
This is intense.
very intense as a clash of operating systems.
Let's talk about the mom first.
Let's look at the mother, Mary Maxwell. She came from a wealthy, established Seattle banking family. Her grandfather was a legendary figure who literally dug out a bank basement as a teenager and worked his way up to eventually owning the entire bank.
Wow.
Mary inherited that drive. She was highly social, incredibly ambitious, and she ran her household with the precision of a corporate merger.
The sources mention she used a continuous improvement approach to family life.
Yes.
It's exactly like the Japanese manufacturing philosophy of Kaizen, where you constantly analyze a system to make incremental improvements.
Precisely. And how did that manifest? Well, after Christmas, every year, instead of just relaxing, Mary would write down detailed notes analyzing what went wrong so she could optimize the next Christmas.
Optimize Christmas.
Yes. The sources quote one note where she wrote, "Grave doubts about using snow on tree again, a miss."
That is both hilarious and mildly terrifying.
It really is.
She also had an intercom system installed in the house, right?
She did.
Just so she could blast a morning reveille song to wake the kids up. She was meticulously orchestrating dinner parties, secretly assigning seats to force intellectual cross-pollination among Seattle's elite.
She was engineering social outcomes.
Yeah.
And then you have the dad, Bill Gates Jr. He grew up in a completely different universe.
Right.
He came from a poor, deeply anxious household in Bremerton, Washington. His father owned a struggling furniture store and was so chronically stressed about money that he would wander the back alleys, picking up dropped pieces of coal just to save on heating.
Wow. The contrast between Mary's banking family and his dad picking up alley coal is staggering.
It is. And Bill Jr., forged his own path out of that anxiety through pure, unadulterated pragmatism.
How so?
He secretly bought a beat-up car as a teenager just to get some physical independence. When he joined the army during World War II, he legally changed his name.
Oh, right, he dropped the third.
Exactly. He was born William Henry Gates III, but he knew the drill sergeants would ruthlessly mock a guy with the third suffix. So he just dropped it and became Junior.
That's so smart.
It's a highly practical, rational maneuver to avoid friction. He grew into this towering 6'7" lawyer with a profound, unshakable sense of justice and calm.
I'm trying to put myself in Trey's shoes here. Imagine being a highly introverted, eccentric, hyper-focused kid who just wants to sit in his room, rocking back and forth, reading the World Book Encyclopedia from A to Z.
Right.
And you are trapped in a family functioning like a highly optimized, extroverted political campaign.
A campaign run by his mother.
Campaign run by a mother who literally charges you 25 cents to buy back the clothes you absentmindedly left on your bedroom floor.
When you lay it out like that, it's obvious that rebellion was the only possible outcome.
Yeah, you can't contain that.
The mother's operating system was entirely based on social connection, civic duty, maintaining appearances, and strict adherence to arbitrary rules like no elbows on the table or making sure your bed is perfectly made.
Arbitrary rules, right.
But Trey's operating system was based purely on logic, efficiency, and isolated focus. He literally couldn't comprehend why he should care about a neatly made bed when his brain was completely occupied with trying to figure out how sound waves propagate through different densities of matter.
I mean, if the rule doesn't have a logical foundation, why follow it?
Exactly. And that fundamental disconnect led to all-out war at home and some incredibly bizarre behavior at school.
Let's talk about the school behavior first, because the A3 grading proposal in 4th grade perfectly encapsulates this kid's mind.
It really does. So he was in Mrs. Carlson's 4th grade class.
Okay.
He very quickly realized that math is just a set of basic rules. 4 times 4 is always 16. There's no ambiguity. He would finish audio math quizzes far ahead of the rest of the class.
Right.
But he completely refused to put any effort into his handwriting.
Because logically, if the point of writing is just to convey information, why does it matter if the letters are pretty?
Right. And this leads to his infamous proposal to the teacher. The school graded on 2 distinct metrics: a letter for the actual quality of the work and a number for the amount of effort the student put in.
Okay, I follow.
So an A1 meant you did top-tier work and you tried your absolute hardest. I have to stop you there, because I can imagine a smart kid arguing for an A1, but Trey goes to Mrs. Carlson and argues for an A3, right?
Yes.
An A for the work, but a 3 for minimum effort. Help me understand that logic. Why wouldn't he just want the A1?
Because to his mind, an A1 is actually a failure of efficiency.
A failure.
Think about it algorithmically. If a student is a true genius, they shouldn't have to expend any effort at all to achieve an A grade.
Oh.
Effort is a cost. You want to minimize cost while maximizing output.
That makes total sense.
Therefore, an A3 top marks achieved with absolute minimum effort should be considered the ultimate grade. He literally asked her to give him an A3 to reflect his efficiency.
That is wild. He's applying an engineer's optimization mindset to a 4th grade report card. Mrs. Carlson must have thought he was just being an arrogant brat.
She certainly didn't appreciate the genius of the optimization. And when he did decide to apply effort to a project, it was often alarming to everyone around him.
Right, which brings us to the cow lung incident we mentioned at the start.
Yes. So for a show-and-tell project, he wanted to demonstrate how oxygen transfer works in the respiratory system. A normal kid draws a diagram on poster board.
Sure.
Trey consults his dad, who manages to source a literal bloody cow lung from a local slaughterhouse.
I still can't believe this.
Trey brings this massive organ to school, wrapped in a blood-seeding sheet. He plops it down on his desk right in front of these 4th graders and starts physically squeezing it to demonstrate the bellows effect of the diaphragm.
And a classmate takes one look at the blood and just faints right there in the classroom.
It perfectly demonstrates his total lack of social awareness, coupled with this intense, unfiltered drive to understand and demonstrate the actual physical mechanics of reality. He didn't want a drawing of a lung.
Yeah.
He wanted the hardware.
The hardware, exactly. But the real friction, the actual war, was happening back at the house, usually at the dinner table. The sources say that by age 9, Trey felt the intellectual divide between himself and adults had completely collapsed.
Right.
He basically looked around and thought, I'm smarter than you. If I can think for myself, why do you get to dictate the rules of my life?
He began a campaign of systematic non-compliance,
Like what?
refusing to answer when his mother called his name, refusing to do basic chores, arguing every single minor point to the absolute death.
And it all climaxed during one specific dinner. The tension had been building for months. He was being so incredibly argumentative, so incredibly rude and relentlessly insulting to his mother, that his notoriously gentle, calm, 6'7" father finally snapped.
Which takes a lot.
A lot. Bill Jr. picked up a glass of water and threw it right in his son's face.
Which is shocking behavior for a man whose entire personality was built on calm, pragmatic rationality.
But the truly shocking part is Trey's reaction. He doesn't cry. He doesn't flinch.
No.
He just looks down at his wet plate, says, "Thanks for the shower," stands up, and slowly walks down to his basement bedroom.
That specific moment terrified his parents. They realized in that instant that their standard disciplinary tactics, yelling, grounding, physical shock,
Yeah.
were failing completely.
They had no power.
They had no leverage left. So they did what highly educated people in the 1960s did when they hit a wall.
Yeah,
They sought outside help.
right.
They took him to a child psychologist named Dr. Charles Cressy.
I found this part of the sources deeply fascinating because Dr. Cressy does not do what you would expect a therapist in that era to do.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't try to fix Trey's rebelliousness by giving the parent strategies to make him compliant.
Not at all.
Oh.
Dr. Cressy performs a piece of brilliant psychological jujitsu.
Oh.
He sits this angry, hyper-rational, hyper-combative kid down in his office, and he just listens to him. He treats him like an intellectual equal.
Okay.
And after listening, Dr. Cressy tells him very plainly, you're going to win.
Wow. Imagine hearing that as a kid locked in a bitter war with your parents. You're gonna win. What exactly did he mean by that?
Well, by saying that, Dr. Cressy was validating the boy's central thesis, his intellect and his eventual independence.
Okay.
He explained to Trey that his parents loved him unconditionally. That was a fixed variable.
Right.
And he explained that eventually Trey would grow up, leave the house, and have complete control over his own life. That was another fixed variable. Therefore, the war for independence was already won.
Oh, I see. He translated the emotional conflict into a logic puzzle.
Exactly. If A equals they love me no matter what, and B equals I will leave and be independent eventually, then C equals fighting them right now is a completely inefficient use of energy.
That is so smart.
Why waste all this incredible cognitive processing power fighting a battle whose outcome is already guaranteed? Why not redirect that immense energy into preparing for the real world?
He used Trey's own hyper-rationality to diffuse the conflict, but Dr. Cressy didn't just work on Trey. He had to fix the other side of the equation, too.
Crucially, Dr. Cressy then met privately with the parents, and he told Mary and Bill Jr. something that must have been incredibly difficult for them to hear.
What did he say?
He told them to give it up. He said they needed to systematically ease their control. They had to back off and let him be who he was.
This is such a pivotal crossroads in the story. I keep thinking, what if the parents had ignored that therapist?
It would have been disastrous.
What if, instead of backing off, Mary had doubled down on the Kazan family management and Bill Jr. had doubled down on the strict discipline? What if they had sent him to a rigid military academy to force him into a conventional mold?
If they had tried to crush that independence, the immense cognitive energy he possessed would have been spent entirely on friction.
Just fighting the system.
Yes, he would have spent his entire adolescence trying to hack and dismantle the systems of control around him rather than building something new. By backing off and giving him space, they created a vacuum.
And Trey immediately filled that vacuum with intense intellectual pursuits.
Which leads us perfectly to the next phase of his life. Once the war at home cooled down, he needed somewhere to put all that newly freed up brain power.
Right.
He found his first true sanctuary in the school library.
Remember Mrs. Carlson, the 4th grade teacher he asked for the A3 grade?
The one who didn't appreciate his efficiency.
Exactly. She was so completely exhausted by his constant interruptions and his odd, highly technical questions that she finally just walked him down the hall to the school library.
She gave up.
Yeah, she handed him off to the librarian, Mrs. Blanche Caffier, and essentially said, "Do you have anything that can occupy this kid?"
Now, Mrs. Caffier could have just handed him a massive dictionary and told him to sit quietly in the corner. But she was incredibly perceptive.
She was.
She recognized that he didn't want to be passive. He needed a system to interact with. So she gave him a job.
A job? What kind of job?
She told him she had a backlog of missing books that were shelved in the wrong places throughout the library. She asked him to act as her detective to find them. And to do that job effectively, She taught him the Dewey Decimal System.
I love this detail because it makes so much sense. Think about it, the real world, the world of his parents and his classmates is messy.
Very messy.
It's emotional, it's full of illogical rules about elbows on tables. But the library has a strict numerical range from 000 to 900.
Right.
It is a perfectly logical, bounded system where every single piece of information has an exact correct place.
Mrs. Keffier basically introduced him to his first physical database.
That's precisely what it was.
Yeah.
And he absolutely devoured it. He started skipping recess just to work in the library. He hyper-focused on understanding the categorization of all human knowledge.
Well,
It proved that he wasn't lazy or a bad student. He just required tasks that matched the scale of his intellectual appetite.
and we see the true scale of that appetite the very next year.
5th grade. Right. He transfers to a new public school in Laurelhurst for 5th grade. Initially, he plays the class clown just to survive the social transition, but then he gets assigned a state report.
The infamous Delaware Report.
Yes.
The assignment is standard elementary school fare, pick a U.S. state, draw the flag, list the state bird, maybe write 5 pages. Everyone in the class wants to pick California or Florida or New York.
The fun states.
Right. Trey draws the number 1 pick. And purely to be contrarian, truly to challenge himself, he picks Delaware.
Delaware, of
Yeah.
all places.
Yes.
And he doesn't just write a report, he practically inhales the entire state. But I have to ask, how does a 10-year-old kid in the 1960s, long before the internet, even research something like this to the extreme degree the sources describe?
It required an obsessive level of manual research. He read every encyclopedia entry. He went through National Geographical guides and historical texts.
Okay, that's normal enough.
But he didn't stop there. He started writing physical letters to the state government of Delaware, requesting their official tourist brochures. He looked up companies headquartered in Delaware and wrote letters requesting their annual corporate reports.
You're kidding.
No. And he synthesizes all of this into a 177-page report.
177 pages. In the 5th grade.
In the 5th grade.
The sources say he actually built a custom wooden cover for it. It included a 400-year historical chronology, a meticulously detailed tourist guide, creative writing sections, featuring fictitious accounts of an oyster fisherman, and this is the part that blows my mind.
The corporate analysis.
Yes, a deep corporate analysis of the chemical company DuPont.
Yes, a 10-year-old analyzing the management structure and polymerization chemistry of a major industrial corporation.
It's unbelievable.
But if we connect this back to Dr. Cressy's advice, this is the magnificent result of that redirected energy. The Delaware Report wasn't just a school project to get a grade. It was his first serious attempt to mentally model a highly complex, real-world system encompassing history, economics, chemistry, and corporate structure, and map it all out on paper. It was him proving to himself that he could master an entire domain.
But eventually, he was going to outgrow public school. I mean, even a 177-page report couldn't contain his intellect for long.
Exactly.
His parents realized that Laurelhurst couldn't challenge him, so they made a major decision. They stretched their finances to send him to Lakeside, an elite private boys' school in North Seattle.
Lakeside was modeled heavily on East Coast prep schools. Brick buildings, manicured green lawns, boys were required to wear jackets and ties to class.
Very traditional.
It was an environment designed to groom the future leaders of the Pacific Northwest.
And it was at Lakeside that he discovered 2 forces that would truly test his limits. 2 things that, on the surface, seem completely opposite, but, as we'll see, actually served the exact same psychological function for him.
The Olympic wilderness and the computer room.
Let's start with the physical trial. He joins Boy Scout Troop 186.
Right.
But he doesn't just tie knots in the church basement. He falls in with a hardcore splinter group led by an older, more intense scout named Mike Collier.
And they start undertaking these grueling, genuinely dangerous 50-mile hikes in the Olympic Mountains along the rugged Pacific coast.
When I say grueling, I want you to picture the conditions. We are talking about multi-day expeditions pushing through dense, old-growth forests. They're wearing soaked, heavy, itchy army surplus wool pants.
Sounds awful.
They have to perfectly time the ocean tides just to hustle around rocky points on the beach before the water traps them.
The sources describe a hike in the Glacier Peak wilderness that sounds like pure torture.
Oh, the boots.
Yes. Trey had bought these stiff new Italian leather hiking boots. He didn't break them in, By the second day, the boots had rubbed his heels so raw that the text describes them as looking like the inside of a jelly donut.
Oh, that's so gross, but descriptive.
The pain was so intense, he actually had to be given codeine pills by a doctor they encountered on the trail just to physically finish the hike.
Wow. And on another trip, the life-saving trail on Vancouver Island, they were literally cutting red avalanche cord to lash pieces of massive driftwood together to build rafts so they could ford freezing rivers.
Bingo.
And their diet. They were surviving on bricks of Spam mixed with hamburger helper and these extinct sausages called Oscar Mayer smoky links that they cooked in empty coffee cans over a fire.
It sounds utterly miserable. It sounds like the opposite of a sterile, controlled environment. But look closely at what the wilderness actually offered him.
What's that?
Out in those woods, miles from civilization, they were completely away from their parents. They had extreme autonomy. They had to make their own life or death decisions about risk, navigation, and survival.
Which, amazingly, is the exact same dynamic he found in the computer room.
Yes.
Let's talk about how the computer arrived at Lakeside, because it wasn't a given. It happened through a rummage sale.
Right. In 1968, the math department at Lakeside decided they wanted to expose the boys to computers. But this was the era of the mainframe.
Right? The giant machines.
Computers were massive, room-sized machines that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. A high school couldn't possibly buy one. However, a new technological concept called time-sharing had just been invented.
How did that work?
Time-sharing allowed multiple users to connect to a single remote mainframe over a standard phone line using a terminal.
So the Lakeside Mothers Club holds a massive rummage sale. They raise about $3,000, which was a lot of money then. They use it to lease a terminal called a teletype ASR-33, and they buy a block of hourly computer time on a mainframe located miles away.
I want to make sure we understand what this machine actually looked and felt like because it dictates how he learned to code. The teletype ASR-33 was not a computer with a screen and a mouse.
No, it looked like a heavy industrial typewriter sitting on a stand with a literal rotary telephone dial built into the side.
Exactly. To use it, you had to pick up the receiver, dial the phone number for the mainframe computer, wait for the screech of the modem connection, and then place the receiver into an acoustic coupler.
So mechanical.
And when you typed, it was painfully slow. It would physically chug out the computer's responses on a roll of yellow paper at a maximum speed of 10 characters per second. Check it, check it, check.
It's such a visceral experience, but the breakthrough was the language it used. It used a brand new programming language called BASIC.
Right.
Before BASIC, you had to write in complex machine code. BASIC allowed novices to use English-like commands, go to, if, then print, to instruct the machine.
And Trey was instantly mesmerized. He writes his first program, which is a simple game of tic-tac-toe where you play against the computer. Then he graduates to writing a lunar lander game.
Okay.
And in doing so, he realizes something fundamental about the nature of the machine. The computer is completely dumb.
Dumb.
It has no intuition. It requires absolute unforgiving precision. If you misplace a single semicolon, if you forget one line number, the program crashes immediately.
But for a mind that craves logical consistency, a mind that was driven crazy by arbitrary rules at home, that unforgiving precision is deeply, deeply satisfying. The machine never lies, and it never changes the rules on you.
So we have the brutal physical reality of the wilderness hikes on one hand, and the abstract, hyperlogical reality of the computer teletype on the other. And the sources point to a specific moment where these two worlds actually converge in a really profound way.
The Press Expedition Trail.
Yes.
This is June 1971, a 50-mile hike through the Olympic Mountains. The weather turns horrific. They hit heavy snow. It's freezing cold.
Miserable.
They are hiking up a steep pass called the Low Divide, and when they finally reach the area where they plan to sleep, they find their intended log shelter is completely buried under the snow.
The group stops and takes a vote on whether to turn back or push forward into the storm. Trey, looking at the situation rationally, votes to turn back. But he is outvoted by the older scouts. They push on into the freezing sleet. He is shivering, he is miserable, his close friend is limping beside him with a deeply gashed knee. It's a moment of peak physical suffering.
So what does he do? He can't change the physical reality, so he completely retreats into his mind. While his body is mechanically trudging through the snow hour after hour, his brain is actively writing computer code.
Specifically, he is mentally writing and optimizing a basic formula evaluator for a new, relatively small computer that Lakeside had briefly acquired called a PDP-8.
This is where I want to pause and synthesize what we're looking at here.
Go ahead.
Hiking and coding seem like total opposites. One is physical, dirty, and outdoors. The other is mental, sterile, and indoors. But they both offered this kid the exact same psychological reward.
Extreme autonomy.
Yes, extreme autonomy, completely clear measures of success, and an environment totally free of adult supervision. When you are on the trail, success is reaching the river before dark. When you are coding, success is the program running without a syntax error.
That is a brilliant synthesis. And there's an even deeper structural parallel playing out in his mind on that trail, which centers on the concept of writing short.
Writing short? What's that?
Well, the PDP-8 computer he was mentally coding for had severe limitations. It only had 6 kilobytes of memory.
Let's put that in perspective. 6 kilobytes. A single low-resolution photo on a modern smartphone takes up about 3,000 kilobytes. He had 6.
Exactly. So programs had to be incredibly lean. You couldn't write sloppy, verbose code. You had to meticulously strip away every single unnecessary command, every redundant loop, so it wouldn't hog the tiny memory bank.
I see.
On that freezing trail, the brutal physical constraints of the hike perfectly mirrored the extreme memory constraints of the computer. The physical rhythm of his boots, crunching in the snow, acted exactly like his childhood rocking habit. It was a metronome.
Wow.
He spent a 20-mile day in the snow, silently whittling down his code in his head, making it as efficient and elegant as possible. He later said it was the best, tightest code he had ever written.
It's an incredible image. But he didn't do all his coding in isolation. Let's unpack the dynamic of the computer room itself.
Because it wasn't just him.
No, it wasn't just a room with a loud machine in it. It was where he met his tribe, the Lakeside Programming Group.
If the teletype machine was the campfire, these 4 boys were the tight-knit expedition team gathered around it. But to feed their addiction to computing, they had to go to extreme lengths, because computer time in the late 60s was incredibly expensive.
Before we get to the lengths they went to and the heists they pulled off, we need to introduce the cast of characters. We already know Trey, but then there's Paul Allen.
Paul Allen was 2 years older, a sophomore. He carried himself with the air of a Renaissance man. He played guitar, he wore mutton chops, he read dense science fiction novels, and he constantly pushed and dared the younger boys.
He was the challenger.
He was the one who first challenged Trey in the computer room, essentially saying, "You think you're so smart, you figure this thing out."
Then there was Rick Weiland. He was more quiet, highly cerebral, the kind of guy who built complex electric relay computers in his garage for fun.
Right.
And finally, there was Kent Evans.
Kent is an absolutely fascinating figure in this story. He was an 8th grader, exactly Trey's age, but he carried a leather businessman's briefcase everywhere he went.
A briefcase to 8th grade.
Yes. He had a cleft lip from birth that required intense, painful surgeries, which seemed to give him a unique fearlessness about what other people thought of him.
And he was completely obsessed with national politics. Now, the sources detail this extensively, and it's a vital part of who he was.
It was 1968, a deeply turbulent year.
And just to be clear, we're just looking at the historical facts of his obsessions here, not endorsing his specific political views. But Kent vehemently opposed the Vietnam War. He intensely disliked Richard Nixon, and he was a massive supporter of Eugene McCarthy and later Hubert Humphrey.
He was incredibly committed.
He actually canvassed door-to-door for campaigns and staked out Seattle hotels just to try and meet visiting politicians. While the other kids were trying to figure out 8th grade algebra, Kent was sketching out 20-year career paths to become a diplomat or a senator.
That intense adult-level ambition was highly infectious. Kent and Trey bonded deeply. They would spend hours reading thick biographies of generals, presidents, and politicians, trying to reverse engineer how to achieve greatness on a global scale.
But despite their grand ambitions, their immediate pressing problem was always the same: getting more computer time?
Right. Because the Mothers Club money ran out fast. Enter the C-cubed era.
Who was C-cubed?
There was a French mathematician named Monique Rona who worked at the University of Washington. She was helping to start a local time-sharing company called Computer Center Corporation, or C-cubed.
Okay.
They had just acquired a massive, state-of-the-art, $500,000 DEC PDP-10 computer.
And Mrs. Rona makes this incredible deal with the Lakeside boys. Her son later noted that she had this unique, unshakable faith in the capabilities of young people, which stemmed from her own experiences growing up in the French Resistance during World War II.
She trusted them.
She knew the C-cubed computer software was new and highly buggy. They needed to stress test the system before they could sell time to corporate clients. So she let the Lakeside boys use the massive mainframe for free on one condition.
They had to meticulously document every single time they managed to crash it. They were essentially recruited as test monkeys.
And they went completely feral. They practically lived at the C-Cubed offices, which were housed in a converted Buick dealership in the University District.
But they didn't just want to play lunar lander games anymore. They wanted to understand how the machine actually worked on a fundamental level. And to do that, they resorted to dumpster diving.
I need to paint this picture. It's late at night in Seattle. It's probably raining.
Usually is.
The C-Cubed engineers are inside working on the computer's core operating system, called TAP-PS10. This operating system isn't written in simple BASIC. It's written in highly complex machine code, the raw instructions that talk directly to the processor.
Right.
That code was considered proprietary and was strictly off-limits to the kids. But the engineers, when they made mistakes, would throw their discarded coffee-stained printouts into the trash in the alley.
So Paul Allen would physically boost Trey up into these massive, wet, metal dumpsters in the alleyway behind the Buick dealership.
In the middle of the night.
Yes. Trey would dig past the garbage, the cigarette butts, the coffee cups, to fish out these crumpled, continuous feed paper scrolls of machine code. They would gather them up, sneak them inside, lay them out on the floor, and spend all night painstakingly reverse engineering the commands.
Trying to decipher the secret language of the machine.
Exactly. Figuring out what ADD, SUB, push-EH, and POP actually did to the memory registers.
This directly brings to mind Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000-hour rule from his book Outliers.
Oh, absolutely.
The idea that world-class mastery of any complex skill requires 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. The author of the memoir explicitly notes that without this highly specific, incredibly lucky window of unlimited, unconstrained, free computer time, what he calls the crucial first 500 hours, the remaining 9,500 hours of mastery might never have happened at all.
The lengths Trey went to just to secure those hours are wild. He was waiting until his parents went to sleep, sneaking out of his basement bedroom window at 10 p.m., creeping under his own deck, walking to the bus stop, catching the late-night number 30 bus to the University District, and coding until 2 a.m. just to catch the bus back before dawn.
But eventually, they flew too close to the sun. C-Cubed stabilized their software and started getting charged for their computer lease by the manufacturer. That meant the free ride for the test monkeys was over.
The boys were demoted to paying customers.
Which, of course, they couldn't afford. So they hacked the system.
They did.
Trey had spent so much time reverse engineering the TOPS-10 code that he discovered a fatal flaw in the login sequence. If you typed Ctrl-C twice at the exact right moment during the login window, the system panicked and dropped you into an administrator level.
It was like finding a digital skeleton key to the entire building.
Paul Allen used that exploit to hunt through the system and find user passwords so they could steal computer time on other people's accounts. But they weren't quite as invisible as they thought.
They got caught.
They got caught.
And the corporate wrath came down on them. They were called into the C-Cubed offices and confronted by a terrifying man in a dark suit with a sharp Van Dyke beard. The boys were absolutely convinced he was an FBI agent.
Oh, man.
He sternly informed them they had broken the law, committed theft, and they were permanently banished from their digital playground.
Which forces a massive evolution for the group. Banished from playing, they have to figure out how to legitimize their obsession so they can get back on the machines. They have to transition from being kids playing games and hacking to being businessmen offering a valuable service.
This is Turning Pro. The transition happens through something called the ISI Payroll Project.
Right. A time-sharing company down in Portland, Oregon called Information Sciences, Inc., or ISI, offers the Lakeside boys a deal. ISI needs someone to write a complex payroll program, literally called Payroll, for an organ manufacturing client.
Okay.
They need it written in a business language called COBOL, which none of the boys really know. In exchange for delivering the program, the boys will get a massive block of free computer time.
They sign the contract. But the sheer pressure of a real corporate deadline immediately fractures the group. This is the great schism of the Lakeside programming group.
What happened?
Paul and Rick, the older sophomores, decide there isn't enough complex work to go around, so they literally fire Trey and Kent from the project.
They fired them.
Yes.
But their arrogance bites them instantly.
Yeah.
Paul and Rick quickly realize that corporate payroll is a nightmare. It's not just writing a simple math loop, it's calculating local taxes, complex federal withholdings, Social Security matching, unemployment insurance.
It's a labyrinth of legal and financial rules. They are drowning.
So they have to swallow their pride, come crawling back, and beg Trey and Kent to rejoin the team.
And Trey looks at them and says, "Okay, I will come back, but I am in charge now."
Wow.
And he ruthlessly divides the equity of the partnership, which is the free computer time, into 11ths, based strictly on who he thinks will do the most actual coding.
Wait, 11th?
Yes, he gives Paul an insulting 1/11th of the equity. Rick gets 2/11ths, and Trey and Kent demand 4/11ths each. And the older boys, desperate for help, just have to accept it.
I want to highlight something incredible here. These are high school and junior high kids. How on earth did they understand corporate payroll taxes, federal withholdings, and ruthless equity splits?
I was thinking the exact same thing, but if you connect this back to the parents, it makes perfect sense.
Oh.
This kid grew up sitting at the dinner table listening to his corporate lawyer, dad, meticulously dissect business disputes and liability clauses. He listened to his nonprofit board member mom discussing matching funds, committee rules, and organizational hierarchies.
It is in the air.
The language of contracts, shares, and professional disputes was literally his native tongue. This wasn't just a high school coding project. This was, in every meaningful way, his first startup.
And like any true startup, it had its near-death crises. Because they were banned from C-Cubed, they managed to talk their way into using the computer lab at the University of Washington to code the COBOL program.
Right.
But the night before their massive deadline to deliver the software to Portland, disaster strikes. Paul Allen decides to borrow an expensive piece of equipment, an acoustic coupler from a UW professor's office, without permission.
The professor catches them red-handed, is absolutely furious, and has them completely banned from the UW lab right before the deadline.
So the next morning, running on zero sleep, panicked about the code, these 4 teenagers take a 7 a.m. Greyhound bus down to Portland. They're wearing their lakeside blazers and ties, carrying briefcases, trying desperately to look like professional software consultants.
They walk into the ISI executive offices, utterly terrified they're going to be laughed right out of the room.
But they aren't laughed out. They load the paper tape, they deliver the payroll code. It works perfectly.
Amazing.
The executives are so impressed, they take these teenagers out to lunch at an upscale restaurant. Kent Evans, ever the negotiator, even starts pitching future deals based on royalties rather than hourly pay. They were taken entirely seriously as businessmen.
But as they transition fully into the real business world, they start encountering real-world conflicts that require adult-level resolution. And this brings us to a hilarious but telling incident, the deck tape scandal.
Oh, I love this story.
When C-Cubed eventually went bankrupt, their assets were auctioned off at the federal courthouse. Kent Evans, acting like a corporate raider, researched the auction. He and Trey managed to track down the buyer of 123 D-tapes. These were pocket-sized plastic canisters of magnetic tape used for premium storage, much better than paper. They bought the lot cheaply, hoping to either resell them or mine them for leftover code.
It's raining hard one day, so Kent and Trey stash this paper bag full of valuable tapes in the hollow base of a teletype machine at school to keep them safe. When they come back the next day, the tapes are gone.
Just gone.
Kent does some digging and realizes Paul Allen took them.
Now, a normal 8th grader would just yell at his friend in the hallway. But Kent doesn't do that. Kent drafts a 3-page formal legal document.
An 8th grader?
Yes, he literally types it up and titles it, Statement of Kent Evans, Bill Gates on Associations with Paul Allen and Rick Wayland. He formally accuses the older boys of grand theft and threatens to take legal action if the tapes aren't returned by morning.
It's incredibly funny to picture these kids doing this, but it shows how deeply they had internalized the corporate legal mindset. Paul eventually gives the tapes back. But a much bigger external dispute was looming on the horizon.
What was that?
ISI, the company down in Portland, decides to suddenly renege on their contract. They refuse to give the boys the $5,000 worth of free computer time they were promised for building the payroll program.
Kent is furious. He is pacing back and forth in the living room at Trey's house, demanding that they file a lawsuit against ISI. He is ready for total legal war.
And this is where Dad steps in. Bill Jr., the towering, calm, pragmatic lawyer. He sits in his armchair and listens to Kent's impassioned ranting. Then, without getting emotional, he simply picks up the phone and calls the president of ISI in Portland.
The sources describe this fall, and it is a masterclass in negotiation.
How does he handle it?
Bill Jr., identifies himself as the father of one of the boys, and crucially, as an attorney. He doesn't yell. He lets the ISI president talk and talk, offering all his blustering excuses for why they shouldn't have to give these teenagers the computer time.
Okay.
And when the president finally runs out of breath and finishes his excuses, Bill Jr. simply says, "I hear you."
I hear you. I love that so much. It is so chillingly effective.
It is.
It's the ultimate lawyer move. It acknowledges that sound waves have entered his ears without conceding a single point of the argument. It leaves the ISI president with absolutely nothing to push against.
Within 2 weeks of that single phone call, they have a formal, signed agreement securing the full $5,000 in computer time for the boys. And to perfectly cap off the lesson in corporate reality, Bill Jr. actually bills the boys $11.20 to cover the long-distance phone charges.
Let's truly analyze this moment because it is the culmination of everything we've talked about. This scene represents the ultimate synthesis of the family dynamics.
It really does.
You have the mother's intense organizational logic, the father's calm, pragmatic legal authority, and Trey's relentless, aggressive drive all working together. The parents who once fought so bitterly with their rebellious son over elbows on the dinner table are now literally acting as his legal counsel in his teenage corporate business ventures.
It represents the complete full circle of Dr. Cressy's therapy. The war at home is completely over. Why? Because the son has successfully directed all of his combative, hyper-rational energy outward into the marketplace.
Wow.
And if you step back and look at the dynamic of this lakeside programming group, the ruthless equity splits, the high-pressure corporate deadlines, the late-night coding binges, and navigating clients with legal precision, this wasn't just a club. This was the exact blueprint, the source code for the massive software empire that would change the world just a few years later.
It is an absolutely incredible journey. We started this hour with a hyperkinetic, argumentative child rocking continuously on a rubber hobby horse, a kid who threw a bloody cow lung on a desk to prove a point, and who demanded an A3 grade for mathematical efficiency.
And we watched him systematically evolve.
Right. He learned game theory from his grandmother's card table. He mapped out corporate structures in the library. He forged his focus on freezing mountain trails. And he learned to bend the reality of business by dumpster diving for machine code and negotiating software royalties before he even had a driver's license.
And the why you should care connection here is vital for anyone listening. We all love the myth of the neat, compliant boy genius who gets perfect grades, never talks back, and politely invents the future in a clean room.
It's a nice story.
But true, paradigm-shifting genius rarely looks like that. It looks like obsessive curiosity. It looks like relentless rule-breaking. It looks like a desperate, sometimes obnoxious need for a framework that finally makes sense of a messy, illogical world.
It really makes you think about how fragile these trajectories are. We just spent this deep dive hearing how a therapist advising parents to simply back off, and a librarian giving a restless kid a job, and a teacher allowing boys to run completely wild in an unsupervised computer room literally changed the course of technological history.
They didn't try to suppress the obsession or force him to be normal. They gave the obsession a playground. They handed it the tools and got out of the way.
So I'll leave you with this provocative thought to ponder today. Look around at the unconventional, difficult, or intensely obsessive people in your own life, in your family, or in your workplace. When they challenge the rules and push against the boundaries, what is your instinct? Are you trying to force them into study hall so they fit the mold? Or are you handing them the keys to the computer room to see what they can build?